Welcome to the Explainer. Today we're zeroing in on Chapter 7 of a truly critical tutorial from Virtualization Options LLC, a technology research and advisory group out of Colorado. We're translating their deep dive into an authoritative briefing specifically for infrastructure and security architects. So if you're the one tasked with supporting your organization's inevitable migration from IPv4 to IPv6, and you already know your way around IPv4 networking, you're in the exact right place. Now, the full source material is a massive 10-part guide, basically the ultimate reference for securing this transition. But today, we're isolating just Chapter 7. We're extracting the absolute most imperative architectural controls, focusing heavily on security risks, firewall design implications, and a comparative analysis of transition technologies to get your network completely locked down. Here's our roadmap for Chapter 7. 1. The transition imperative. 2. The coexistence attack surface. 3. Dual-stack security risks. 4. Tunneling and translation risks. 5. IPv6 firewall design. And 6. The architect's action plan. Okay, Section 1, the transition imperative. Let's just dive right into the sheer urgency of the situation we're all facing. 2011, that's the year the IANA free pool was officially depleted. We have to understand that IPv4 exhaustion isn't some theoretical future risk, it's a concluded event. All 5 regional internet registries tapped out their standard allocation pools years ago, and meanwhile, IPv6 adoption has absolutely exploded, with major ISPs already running IPv6 primary networks. But because we all have legacy OT and ICS systems, embedded devices, and older enterprise apps with hard-coded IPv4 assumptions, we can't just flip a switch and re-platform everything overnight. And what that practically means for you is that a decades-long protocol coexistence is your operational reality right now. Section 2, the coexistence attack surface. Because these legacy systems force a coexistence period that will be measuring in decades rather than years, we urgently need to understand the new threat landscape this creates. Chapter 7 lays it out perfectly. Every transition mechanism introduces a distinct attack surface. That's really the core thesis of our explainer today. You have to connect incompatible endpoints, there's no way around it. But whether you choose to use tunnels, translators, or run a dual-stack environment, every single method fundamentally alters your network's integrity. There are no free passes here. So let's break down our 3 primary transition mechanisms to see how this risk builds up. First, we have dual-stack. Conceptually, this is the simplest model. You just run complete IPv4 and IPv6 stacks simultaneously on every single node. But here's the catch. It literally doubles your policy surface. It forces your ops teams to manage 2 entirely separate IPAM ecosystems and doubles your routing table size, all without actually doing anything to solve the original IPv4 address exhaustion problem. Next up is tunneling. This is where you encapsulate one protocol inside another to cross incompatible infrastructure. Think of technologies like 6and4 or Teredo. And while it does establish deterministic paths, it brings along some serious MTU and fragmentation headaches. But way more alarmingly from a security standpoint, tunnels can easily allow rogue data to completely bypass your perimeter controls, especially through Protocol 41. And finally, we have translation. Technologies like NAT64 perform stateful or stateless header conversion right at the network boundary. Now, this does successfully connect incompatible endpoints, but it breaks end-to-end semantics and opens up massive vulnerabilities around state table exhaustion at the translator. Basically, if an attacker floods your translator, your cross-protocol communication just drops dead. Section 3, dual-stack security risks. Now that we've got those categories clearly defined, let's go ahead and shatter the false sense of security around the most common enterprise approach out there, dual-stack. The really crucial point here is the compounding threat matrix on your dual-stack nodes. First, you have a massive firewall rule gap. Teams meticulously write IP tables for IPv4, right? But they completely forget IP6 tables. Second, scanner blind spots. Your security scanners are probably only targeting IPv4 inventories. That means a service that is totally hardened against IPv4 attacks might be fully exposed and completely invisible on its IPv6 address. Third is socket binding. Apps binding to the IPv6 wildlife listen on both paths, letting traffic bypass your IPv4-only controls entirely. And lastly, unintended activation. Linux, Windows, macOS, they all enable the IPv6 stacks silently by default. So your IPv4 interfaces might be locked down tight, but your IPv6 interfaces, probably wide open. Section 4, tunneling and translation risks. Moving forward, let's pivot away from dual stack and analyze the really severe inherent risks embedded deeply within tunneling and translation protocols. When you compare these technologies, you see a massive variance in firewall bypass risk. For instance, Teredo presents a very high risk because it literally acts as a UDP NAT bypass by design. 6 to 4 carries a high risk because of uncertainties around anycast relays. And even your standard 6 and 4 carries a medium risk just via Protocol 41 encapsulation, which forces every single security architect to answer a highly uncomfortable question regarding universal risk across their network. Do your default IPv4 rule sets actually protect your IPv6 traffic? Well, the immediate, sobering answer is absolutely not. They protect exactly none of it. Protocol 41, UDP port 3544, synthesized DNS records, all of this traffic bypasses your standard legacy controls entirely. Section 5. IPv6 Firewall Design. This harsh realization brings us to building IPv6 firewall designs from absolute first principles, because you cannot just copy and paste your legacy logic here. There is a massive architectural shift you have to make. In the IPv4 world, we operated under the single address assumption, one IP per interface giving us a nice single point of policy control. But in IPv6, you're dealing with a multiple address reality. A single host usually has a link local address, a global unique address, or GUA, maybe a unique local address, and one or more temporary privacy addresses, all running at the exact same time. Applying a firewall rule solely to a GUA is totally useless if the outbound traffic just routes around it using a temporary privacy address selected by RFC 6724 rules. Your policy has to account for all address types on that interface. Section 6. The Architect's Action Plan. Let's culminate this Chapter 7 briefing with a rapid-fire, prioritized action plan derived straight from the source material to get your perimeter secured. First up, you absolutely must secure your translation mechanisms. Step 1. Enforce DNSSEC on NAT64 to validate A records before synthesizing AAA records. If validation fails, you treat it as untrusted. Step 2. Heavily rate limit your NAT64 state tables per source IPv6 address. If you don't, you're open to trivial denial of service resource exhaustion. Step 3. Validate MAPT source addresses as a hard border policy. And Step 4. Authenticate your DS-Lite B4 elements via DHCPv6 so you can shut down spoofing attacks against your NAT mappings. Next, you need to implement these exact monitoring and detection rules, and you need to do it today. Any unknown Protocol 41 traffic, that is an unapproved tunnel. Any UDP 3544 flow, that's Teredo, which has zero business running in a production environment. Both of these are immediate security incidents, not just weird anomalies. You also need to monitor for ICMPv6 Type 134 router advertisement floods, which are a dead giveaway for a rogue router. You should track your NAT64 state tables to alert at 70% capacity so you can scale preemptively. And finally, aggressively log all IPv6 extension header anomalies, because unusual chaining is a very well-known evasion technique. I'll leave you with this final provocative thought to take straight back to your engineering teams. Can you confidently audit your organization's completely hidden IPv6 stack visibility right now? Or are rogue, unmanaged IPv6 stacks currently bypassing your perimeter, acting as an invisible shadow network, all while your Security Operations Center focuses purely on IPv4? It's time to find out. Thanks for joining this explainer, and good luck out there securing your transition.